I want to close here by teeing up our last presentation, but also thanking you, because I know we've got 15 minutes between you and the reception, and I'm hoping you're going to stay, because we really don't want to miss comments from Senate Ag Committee Chairwoman Debbie Stabenow. And also, in case you didn't notice, House and Senate are out, and when we have to book these events, we do it a year in advance before we know the congressional schedule, so we can't really tell whether they're going to be in and out. But for each of the top four, the chairs and ranking members, they were so gracious in giving us some of their time in order to help us preview what they're saying about not only this farm bill, but farm bills to come. And of course, Ranking Member Scott was able to Zoom in with us today. So we're very, very grateful for that. And so I'm looking forward to sharing with you my conversation with Senator Stabenow last week. So welcome, Chairwoman Stabenow, to the Agri-Pulse Ag and Food Policy Summit. We're so delighted you could find time in your busy schedule to join us today.
Well, I'm so glad to be with you again, Sara, and I'm usually at the summit in person. Today, I'm in Michigan doing some things and commitments I'd already made, but I couldn't miss a chance to talk with you.
Well, thank you so much. You're always a champion for farm and rural issues. And today we're focusing on next gen farm policy. So I thought I'd start out, because our panel's discussion this morning started with a bunch of young producers from all across the country, and get your thoughts on whether or not we're doing enough at the federal level to bring new and beginning farmers into agriculture and food production.
Well, there's definitely more that we can do, and I look forward to getting the readout from your panel this morning. I mean, when we look at the 5-year farm bill and the commitment to agriculture, this is large farms, small farms, everything in between, and folks that want to get into agriculture, whether it is beginning farmers, whether it's new farmers, our veteran farmers, whether somebody wants to carry on a multi-generational farm. We need to be doing everything we can to support all of them. And so, as you know, we have programs, we have crop insurance discounts, we have ways in which we support our new farmers and beginning farmers. But I think that there is certainly more that we can do and that we should do. And I know that when we look at the new ways that people want to get into agriculture and the small farms that actually became really important during COVID as a way to get healthy food, you know, fruits and vegetables when the supply chains broke down and so on. We know that we have to encourage farms of all sizes, and we've got to get more people into agriculture, because I think people would be very hard pressed here. You know, if we didn't have folks willing to take on the riskiest business in the world, which is farming and ranching, we would not have the safest, most abundant, and still the most affordable food supply, even with the challenges that we have had. So this is a big issue to get folks to appreciate, understand, and want to go into agriculture.
You've got a tremendous track record in the Senate for passing bipartisan farm bills. I mean, your margin on the 2018 Farm Bill of 87-13, I mean, gosh, it's got to be tough to think about beating those kinds of numbers. But I do know that there's always a lot of different factors that go into having that kind of a bipartisan farm bill. Tell us a little bit about what you see at this point in time as the biggest threat to passing a bill in a bipartisan fashion.
Well, first of all, Sara, I would say it has to be bipartisan. And Senator Bozeman, who is my wonderful partner in the Senate, as well as my colleagues in the House, Chairman Thompson and Ranking Member Scott, we all understand that we've got to work together and have people understand how important this is for our states, for our communities, for people, for the entire economy of the country. You're right that 87 votes last time was really a high watermark, and it was wonderful to serve with Chairman, Ranking Member Roberts, and then Chairman Roberts. We were a wonderful partnership, and I'm so happy to say that same partnership continues with Senator Bozeman. But the big thing is to really, I think, really educate those who've never voted on a farm bill before. We have new members in the Senate, and we have, a lot of new members in the House that have never voted on a farm bill before and don't understand what that means. I mean, one of the things I'm concerned about, and this is certainly not coming from agriculture leadership, but when you see proposals to cut mandatory spending, and the folks talking about it are aiming at SNAP and nutrition, but they don't understand every single program in the Farm Bill is mandatory spending. And so that means crop insurance, that means commodity programs, that means trade title, that all of it. And so we've got to make sure that we don't lose the budget that we have, because we have a baseline that's basically continuation, other than in the area of conservation. And so I'm concerned about just educating people, and that's where everybody at the summit needs to be getting engaged. Traditionally, this is not a partisan bill. Frankly, it's more regional. Coalitions form based on what you grow. And so, and that's usually a pretty bipartisan process. And so we've got to make the case for why it's important to have a farm safety net as well as a family safety net, and how we have a stake in people being successful in agriculture and food production. And we have a stake in Americans being able to buy that food and not go hungry. And so it's very, very important. And I finally would say that what we do in the Farm Bill is the largest investment in land and water conservation that our country makes. And so this is incredibly important. And as we look at what has happened with droughts and the fires and the concerns in so many ways affecting our land and our forests, this is something we need to all care about and understand that it affects every one of us in some way.
And we know that you worked really hard to get some additional funding that's going to be available through the IRA to help get more conservation on the land.
Exactly.
Let's drill down into the nutrition titles a little bit more. I think some of the farm groups have recognized what's happened in the past when there have been efforts to split the nutrition title from the farm provisions in the Farm Bill, and that's never worked well. So they've gone on the record as saying we need to keep those portions all together. But how important would it be for them to take an additional step of saying, not only do we want to keep the farm and the food portions of the Farm Bill together as we march forward in future farm policy, but also to keep the funding levels supported in a very robust fashion?
Well, we need to support funding. And first of all, I want to say thank you to all of the major farm organizations and all across the country. We're getting strong support for the nutrition title, the food programs in the Farm Bill. I'm very grateful that people understand, it's on top of being the right thing to do for Americans. For every dollar we invest in helping someone buy food, it's $1.50 in the economy. And so, that person is not putting that money in their pocket. It's going to the grocer and the processor and the, ultimately the farmer and so on. So there's an economic turnaround that is very, very important and very positive for the economy. And so, and it's also important to recognize that 80% of the food assistance that we give in America through SNAP goes to children, people with disabilities, seniors, and veterans. And the overwhelming number of people work. And so it's just that they're working in part-time jobs or very, very low-wage jobs that stop and start and so on. And so they're just trying to hold it together. But it's very important that we come together to support nutrition programs and that we not look at cutting them. And I don't want to cut the commodity programs either. I mean, Title I, the crop insurance. I mean, we have really important challenges for our farmers. While we're seeing prices up, we also see input costs up. And, we got a real eye opener for many people about where fertilizer comes from and potash and, all the component parts when we saw Russia invade Ukraine. And so, and the impact internationally to the food system when that happened. And so our farmers are seeing higher costs. And so I don't support cutting the farm safety net any more than I support cutting the family safety net. And so I think we need to lock arms and make sure this is something that makes sense for everybody.
You've mentioned some of the disruptions that we experienced, not only with Russia invading Ukraine, but certainly the years that we've had to live with COVID.
Right.
But during that time, it seemed to me there was a renewed interest and sort of a renewed respect for food production because people realized that there were shortages in certain areas. Do you think that overall attention to food security is still with us? And is it something that we need to build on in our discussion about future farm and food policy? I'd just like to have your thoughts on that as we close.
Sure. Well, I do think it's still with us. And I do think that issues around supply chains have become even more important. And consolidation, I mean, having regional and local processing is something that I think people are seeing is much more important. Again, having component parts for things like fertilizer made in the U.S., so we're not dependent on other countries for that. All of the pieces around how and where we grow our food and the pieces that relate to how we transport our food and so on. I mean, all these things. I mean, we've had to deal with shipping issues for farmers and, rail and trucking and all these things that come together. And I do think that many people, now not everyone, unfortunately, not everyone that we're working with here in Congress acknowledges or understands that, but more and more people understand this. It's national security. It's safety. It's not just food safety. It really is about national security for us. And I think that's another reason why we really need to reach out to all of our colleagues in the House and Senate to let them know when you have a stable, affordable food supply, when we have a system that supports people taking this risky stuff of being in agriculture, and when we, have a stable way of making sure that people have basic food in this country, nobody's, when we talk about SNAP right now, you're talking about somebody getting $6.10 a day per person, which I've often said is probably less than the cup of coffee that you got this morning. And so, we're not talking about large sums. We're talking about in America having a basic value that nobody's going to go hungry, and we're going to support people to have opportunities to move forward and get job training and work and have opportunities to be successful with their families, and that we're going to support our farmers, everybody involved in farming, ranching, everybody involved in producing our food needs to have that same kind of support.
Well, thank you again, Chairwoman Stabenow. It's always delightful to talk with you, and I wish you the very best as you go and try to navigate through this next Farm Bill process. Thank you so much.
Always great to be with you.
Looking closer, seeing further. That's how we do it. At Curious Plot, we're driven to find what's next for agriculture, animal care, and food. We stay curious because that's what it takes to grow understanding. That's how we plot strategies and tell stories that get results time after time. Marketing, communications, and consulting that look closer and see further. Curious Plot. We can't wait to help you tell your story.